Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Imagine That with Carla. I want to show you some of the new products that I purchased from the new spring release from IOD. This first one that I purchased is called the Sparrow's Nest. The next one is called Blossom Molds. This is one I'm just in love with. This is called Trimmings 4, and all the detail in this is just absolutely gorgeous. This one is vintage brooches, and these I think would make perfect little frames and decorations. Now for the transfers, I got the Wild Blowman 8x12 pack. Lots of beautiful flowers and butterflies. And the next one I got Katarina, the 8x12, and it's got some beautiful birds and beautiful roses. Next I got the Gilded Petites Ornament. It's also 8x12, and I also picked up the Gilded St. Belle 12x16. I went back for that one. I decided I needed that. This is the 12x16 Lost Garden. Beautiful wildflowers. And then I picked up the Spring Melody paint inlay. And this one, oh, I can't wait to try some of these. I'm not that experienced at using the paint inlays, but this had so many options on it. You get 3 full sheets, beautiful roses, 2 sheets of littles, and some borders that all coordinate. And I think this is going to be so much fun to play around with and see how creative you can be and come up with some beautiful things. Here are some items that I've thrifted that I'm going to be using in our projects today. Now the little basket I didn't get to, but I do have 2 more things that are small that I put into the video. The first project is this little wood-lidded jar that I picked up at Goodwill. And first thing I'm going to do is clean it good and take the little rubber ring off. Now I do go over this with a coat of White Swan DIY paint, and while the paint was wet, I did lay the little inlay on top, and then I misted it and let it dry. And after it was dry, I misted it again and kind of dabbed that off with a wet wipe. And then I slowly and very carefully tried to take that off. And like I said, I haven't done this much, so I was really in for a surprise. I didn't know what I was going to get. And to my surprise, it turned out beautifully. Look at this. I was so excited when I pulled that off. It did pull some of the paint, but it gave it a really nice distressed look. And the inlay itself was perfect. So after I dried it off, I decided we probably need to put a sealer on there. Now the paint inlay itself is kind of a water base. So when you put your sealer on, I'm using DIY Big Top, you want to really be careful and not put a heavy hand on that, or you could smear your paint. Actually, I think this is the liquid patina that I'm using. Yes. And just be very light-handed and put it on there. Cover it all around the edges to seal that chalk paint in as well. And I did dry that, and now we're putting back the little rubber ring that came off that secures that to that little glass jar. And I think that turned out adorable. It's screaming candy, jewelry, rings, lots of little things you could put in there. This project is this little box that you saw in the little items I had thrifted. I went ahead and painted it with Fusion's Paisley paint, and then I decided I wanted to use a metallic purple, didn't like it, so I went back and I took Dixie Belle's Tea Rose, which is a very pretty soft kind of mauve-y pink, and I painted that. And then I went to my brooches mold, And I decided I wanted to use one of those that was small enough to go on the top. So we added our cornstarch. I'm using Dawes clay, air dry clay. We put that in the mold. And there we had a little spill. And now we're going to release the clay from the mold, and we're going to add that to the top. I'm going to use some tight bond glue and glued that on. Now we're going to go to this mold is called, I can't remember what this one's called. If I remember it, I'll say. I might see it on there. Move my arm. Let's see. It is called Primitive? Primitive. Okay, so I'm using some of the trimmings from that, and it had a border at the bottom, and I decided I wanted to put that around that little rectangle in the middle to let that kind of stand out a little bit. Again, we added our cornstarch. We're going to roll out our air dry clay, place it in the mold, and remove that. Place it on our little box, and I will miter the corners, and we'll get that all glued up. If any of your little clay molds come apart, you can glue those on, and when you're finished, you won't be able to tell. Now I'm using Victorian lace. Those are glued on, and I let that dry overnight. And I'm using Victorian lace from Fusion. I'm going to go over all the little white pieces with the Fusion lace. Victorian lace. Fusion paint, Victorian lace. So I'm painting also these, look like little spindles on the front, so I want to go ahead and paint those with the Victorian lace as well. And then I'm going to use that to go around the bottom. And even if I get a little bit onto the box, I think I did try to clean that off, but I'm not worried about that because the way I end up finishing this, it's really not going to stand out. So we're doing the bottom. And then I'm just going to take my brush and just kind of make some strokes. Some of it kind of brushed on lightly, some of it a little thicker because I'm going to be doing some other things with this, and I kind of want some of that white to show through a little bit. Going around the top now, getting that trim. Here's where I'm going to take some white, just kind of make some strokes, some heavier, some lighter. Didn't really want it to look whitewashed so much as just have some kind of defining little white streaks in there. That was a little heavy, and I did try to take some of that off. But Fusion paint doesn't come off like DIY chalk paint, so it has a built-in sealer, and it also has a primer inside. Do a little bit on the top. Now I'm going to my transfers. This was taken from the Wild Blowman transfer packet. I just wanted a very small little flower to go up there, and I didn't want anything bright. I wanted it to be subtle. And then I took this transfer and I cut it down to use only the kind of lavender purple flower on there. And then I cut a little piece of greenery. I thought it needed something else to go over on the left side, so we did that. And I'm using a little pokey tool to lift up the carrier sheets so we can make sure we get that transfer pressed down. Now taking that little piece of greenery that we cut off of that other floral and just pressing that on, and that kind of fills in that side. And then I'm going to take another little piece to add to the right side to kind of balance it. Remove the carrier sheet. That didn't get quite attached, so we're going to go back and just go over that again. There's my pokey tool. We lift that up and perfect. Love it. Love how that goes together. Now we're going back to the top. What I'm showing you here is I did use the Paint Couture Crackle 1 and Crackle 2. Comes in 2 steps, and I got a little bit of crackle, but not a whole lot. Then we went to the Gilded Petites ornaments, and I'm going to have to cut down some of these little gold flourishes so they'll fit where I want them to go. So I thought I would put one at the top, one at the bottom, and then one on each side. And when you're putting on a gold transfer or a gilded transfer, try to stay just where you know it needs to transfer. If you get off onto the other space that's solid gold, it could leave little gold flecks on your project. So if you stay within those transfer little designs, it comes out pretty nice actually. Now for the side gilded transfers, I had to cut those down as well to get those to fit in that little small space, and it turned out just the way I wanted it to. Now I'm going to take some dark oil wax from Sweet Pickins, I'm going to apply that over the whole box to give it kind of an aged look and hopefully bring out some of the crackle from the Paint Couture Step 1 and Step 2 set. You can see a little bit on the little brooch, but when I wipe it back, you might be able to see it a little better actually. And this will also help soften up some of those white stripes of paint that I put on there. It will kind of blend it into the paisley. I love this dark oil wax on this paisley paint. I think it gives it such a rich, aged color. Now I'm taking a wet wipe, and I'm wiping it back. So you kind of see some of that crackle coming through on the brooch. And some of it coming through on the box itself. I would like to have had a little more, but I'll keep practicing until we get what we like. Now we're going to go over the bottom and get those spindles and all the little white places really well. See how that softens the white strokes that I put on there? Oh, I love it. I love the way this looks. And on there, you can see that little bit of bubbling. That's when I was drying my crackle. I got a little bit too close with my heat tool, and it did bubble up there a little bit. Now this video, I had picked these up at an estate sale, and I'm sure I paid $2 or less a piece for them, and they're really in pretty good shape. I think they're wood, and they've got a few little scratches on there, so I'm just going to give them a good sanding because it's kind of a slick surface, so my paint will adhere to it a little better. And after I clean that off with a dry cloth and then a wet cloth, I'm going to get my Fusion coal black paint and go over this. It only takes one coat because it covers so well, and there really was not that much damage to these frames. Then I'm going to use some transfers from the Katarina pack, and I'm going for these two birds. Oh, they're so pretty, and I couldn't decide if I want to put it just on that background and, you know, kind of tear the edges and then put it on this gold kind of gilded background. And I decided that I would just go with the textured paper. The textured paper I purchased on HS and Craft Day, and it was featured by Diamond Press. And oh, they had such a nice packet of all different kinds of, it looked like handmade papers, textured papers. So I'm gonna put my frame on there so I know how to center this bird. And after I get it placed on there the way I want it, I simply take my transfer tool and I began rubbing and getting this transfer onto this textured paper. This paper is a pretty light weight paper, so I'm going to actually cut out two heavy pieces of cardstock. I'm going to paint those with DIY chalk paint in, I think it's White Swan. And after that dries really well, I'm going to add a little bit of sealer, and then I'm simply going to take those boards that I cut and I'm going to put my bird on top of that. That's where I'm still kind of decided just to go with the textured paper. I'm going to do the same thing with this little bird, lay it on the under the frame with the textured paper, put the frame on there so I can center that up the way I want it. Take our little transfer tool and just rub that and get that adhered to that piece of paper. Take my little pokey tool, lift that carrier sheet up, and then I'm going to go down again as I'm removing the carrier sheet with my tool to make sure that is on there really well. I'm taking my cardstock that I had painted white. Cardboard, actually, it's a little heavier than just a cardstock sheet. I'm going to use my ATM gun, and I know I'm going to run out before I get around both of them, but we're going to try, see how far we get. And there, oh, there it went, yes. So I'm going to take my double-sided tape now and simply fill in the edges. That's the only place I want the adhesive to be, because it is a lightweight paper and I don't want it showing through. So I'm just going to put it around the edges, and the frame will pretty much cover that. I'm going to be very careful when I put this on, because when it sticks, it's stuck. Over here, I did have a little issue of the paper getting stuck kind of in the wrong place, but fortunately it wasn't really firm down there, and I was able to pull that up without tearing the paper. Take the glass, we're going to insert that, clean it up a little more, have some of my fingerprints on there. I'm going to insert that glass in the back of the frame, insert the picture, and I'm going to take the backing and push that in. It has a little hanger at the top, so I'm not going to be adding another hanger to this. I'm going to do the same with the other one. I did paint the back of the frames. It did have a stand on it, but they had already removed the stand, so I simply took some wood filler and filled in the back, sanded it off, and simply painted over it. Here I'm taking some of my gold wax. It's like a Rub and Buff, but it is not that brand. I've had it in my stash a long time. And I'm just gonna go over the raised places around the edges of the frame. And I think that really gives it a nice pop on the frame. Definitely looking like a high-end picture that you would go into any store or boutique and purchase. When I make something like this, I have to be honest, it's hard for me to put it in my booth because it is so neat. I mean, I love it. It looks, really nice, and I can use that in my home several different places. I love how these birds turned out in these frames. Now this project, I started with this wood pile frame that I picked up from Hobby Lobby at 40% off. It was $5.99, I think. I'm going to remove the backing, set that aside, put all those clamps back down, and now we're going to be using the trimmings for mold to build a frame, a border around this frame. And this turns out, I love the way this turns out. So let's watch it. Okay, now I ran out of my DOS clay, and I'm using a Sculpey air dry clay. I went to, I think it was Walmart to get DOS clay, but they didn't carry it where I was at. So they had this, and I thought, well, I've never tried it. It is an air dry clay, so I think I'll give it a shot. And actually, it's very easy to mold. It was really soft and easy to put in there and take out of the mold. So I put cornstarch in my mold, started adding my clay, and once I got that all in there, and with the clay being so soft, it was really easy to take it out around the edges and make it even around those edges that are raised around the mold. I've seen people use this tool, so I thought I'm going to give that a shot, and it works pretty good. I'm going to get that all up there and straight around the edges. Going to remove that. Look at the detail. Ooh, I knew it was going to be gorgeous, and it is. Look at that detail. Oh, so I'm going to continue and add that all around the frame, and I'm going to show you how I did miter some of the corners where I had to piece it together. This one, it was kind of hard for me to see. I was trying not to get my head in the camera, under the camera rather, and so I kind of got a little off on the corner, but I was able to tuck that in, and it really was not that noticeable. So we've got, looks like a little puzzle piece we're going to shove in there. When we glue that on, we'll make sure we get glue inside there as well. We're going to come over here and do the same thing. Pull it down to the corner, lift and remove, and there you've got, looks like another little puzzle piece. Now we're going to take our Tight Bond wood glue, apply it, and just put those on. And it has dried, and I can see some cracking where it shrank a little bit, but I I don't think that it did shrink any more than any other clay that I've used would have done. So my solution to that, we're going to take little pieces and we're going to roll those into tiny little worm-like things. And we're going to take some of the Titebond wood glue and fill in those cracks with the wood glue. And then we're simply going to take that little piece of rolled up clay and just kind of smush it down in there. And if it were a larger one, and I still may do that with this, I would take my pokey tool and maybe try to make some little etchings in it with my pokey tool to make it look not just like a flat piece of clay there, but give it a little texture and detail. There we go, make it go down in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this paint inlay and I'm going to take some Victorian lace and I'm going to paint over the back of the frame that was in there first. I'm going to give this a couple of coats and let it dry. Now the paint inlay that I'm using is from IOD, but it's an older one. It isn't from the new one that just came out. So I'm going to put that in my frames so I can see where I need to put it. Here it is, Delft, what was that? That went pretty fast. Delft paint inlay. And then I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna trim as close to it as I can get. That way you don't see a paint line as much, I've found. The first inlay I ever did, I didn't realize that, and I did have a paint line, but it turned out beautiful. And it sold really quick, so I guess I was doing something right. And over here, I'm gonna just trim that down again. So I'm going to add the paint again to have it nice and wet when we lay the inlay on. I'm going to do the bottom one. I misted it first, laid it on. Kind of dab that down, push it down. Dab it down with a wet cloth. I'm going to add the more paint to the top. Mist it. And lay it on there as well. Now I'm going to let that dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to use the sparrow's nest, and I'm going to make a little bird nest to go in the center of those two inlays. I'm using my Sculpey dry clay again. Lay that on there to see where I want it. Dry those a little more, then I'm going to mist them. And here's the tell-all. How did we do? Well, this one came off beautifully. It did great. Now, I have my camera speeded up, so when you pull these off, you want to go a little bit slower than what it's showing you here. I'm going to mist that a little more. I have a little trouble getting that to come off. So we pick it up with my pokey tool and I'm raising it just enough to see that it has not fully transferred. So I do a little scrubbing on there with my fingernail and that still didn't help. So we're going to do it again, mist it, let it dry, and I'm going to re-mist it and we're going to go and pull this off. Again, like I said, this is speeded up, so when you're taking this off, you want to go slowly, and look at that. I couldn't ask for it to be any better. I'm excited. I'm liking these inlays. They were kind of scary for me at first, I guess. I don't know. I was afraid I would just totally mess it up. Using the Titebond wood glue, we're going to put some glue on the back of that nest. Going to lay that, try to center it up. I'm using some Victorian lace. We're going to paint the whole thing. Going around the inside edges. Now what I did, not sure if it shows it on here. Yes, I did take some clear wax from DIY and I went over the top of the white because I know that I'm going to be adding a gel to that and I will be wiping it back. Now here is another IOD mold. It's called Bows. This came out around Christmas time. I'm going to use the smaller one, use my air dry clay. The Sculpey brand is what I'm using here. This one doesn't seem to stick to my fingers like the Dawes does. It seems to really cake up on my fingers. But I still like the Dawes clay. It does a good job. Now we're going to take the bow and we're going to add some wood glue. And we're going to spread that around, getting those edges. And I'm going to try to kind of firmly press that in because there are so many details in the scroll mold. Now I'm using a folk art chalk paint. This is called Nautical. And I'm going to paint the bow. I wasn't really sure if I was going to like it, but we're going to paint it blue. That's the only kind of dark blue I had in my stash. All my other blues from other brands were a little bit lighter, and I wanted the dark to kind of go with the dark inlay. So this is called Voodoo Gel. And I think that is, let me look here. I think it's Nautical. No, actually, it's called Denim. This is from Dixie Belle. I've never used the blue. I've got a green and I have the brown Tobacco Road. And as I get this on there, I will be coming back and wiping it off. And as you can see, it stays down in the deep areas and it lets that white come through on the top. I'm loving how this is turning out. Okay, so I am painting my nest and I used paisley for the eggs, and now I'm going to use lichen. These are from Fusion for the leaves, and I will be going over these with Tobacco Road gel stain. Got that dry. There's my gel stain from Dixie Belle. Pour a little bit of that, and I'm going to be wiping that back, and that clear wax really helps you be able to wipe just as much as you want and leave as much as you want to give a contrast in those little pieces of, I guess they're little stems or grass in the nest. And I'm going over the leaves and the eggs as well, and you can see as you start to wipe that back how nice that looks. And you can go back over it again if you want it some places, to keep a little more of the dark. Excuse me. And then just wipe back where you want it lighter. I love the way just, excuse me, the eggs are showing through, very subtle. And the green on the leaves is also very subtle. So much detail, excuse me, in this nest. It just looks gorgeous. I'm happy with this. I just want to say thank you all for watching. This is a new channel for me, and I appreciate those of you who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. I'm starting out from scratch on this YouTube channel, and I have another one that was more for paper crafting, but I love doing this and I appreciate it so much. And if you could leave comments below and hit that like button, I would like that so much. And out of these projects today, maybe you can tell me which one was your favorite. Now this, I tried some gold metallic, it was from Paint Couture glaze to put on there, and I used it in the copper, and I didn't like it. So I had recently purchased some French gold from Paint Couture paint, and I decided to go over my bow with that, and I really like the way that has turned out. It's not a bright gold, it is an antique-y looking gold, and I think that goes well with this kind of cottage core piece, is what I would call it. Now after I have that done, I decided I wanted to go around the inside edges with that as well. So I take my time trying to get around that without getting too much on the top. And off camera, I did go back and touch up some of that with white and then go over it again with blue, so it gives it a better look, I thought. Now I'm decided to go around the edges with this antique French gold, so it isn't just so stark white around the edges. I'm going to leave the inside of it white, trying to achieve that cottage core look. Okay, here I'm going in and I'm trying to kind of touch up a little, but I did do more, as I said, off camera, and you'll see the finished piece at the end. Here I thought I'd go back in and maybe try to wipe off some of that went up over the edge and didn't come off real well because it had been dried on there. But I'm liking how this turned out. I really am. So as we get to the end, the last couple pictures are after I had gone back and touched up a little bit. Now, how do you like this? I would like for you to leave comments below. Now, here are all the finished products. You can see that there are a couple of items in here that were not filmed. That little vase holder there, that was green, and I just simply painted it white, went over with gold. This little picture frame here with the frog, that is from the Wild Blowman transfer sheets.